Glenn McGregor, CTV News. Prime Minister, thanks for taking our questions. A year ago at this time, at the G7, the president left and called you weak and dishonest. And I wonder if you could talk about how your personal relationship with him has evolved in that time up until today.
I think one of the things that we've done since the very beginning of our mandate is maintain the focus on the things that matter in this relationship. That is the flow of goods across our border, the reduction of challenges that we faced, and continue to focus on what's good for the middle class and people working hard to join it in both of our countries. Throughout the NAFTA negotiations, which were contentious at times, absolutely, we remained focused on the things that really matter, and because of that, we've come through it with a very strong and positive relationship with the United States, and indeed are moving forward on the ratification of an accord that will secure this important relationship for years to come.
Trump has still not made an official state visit to Canada. That's unusual for U.S. presidents. Did you discuss that with him today, or have you invited him to come to Ottawa?
I was pleased to have welcomed President Trump up to beautiful Charlevoix last year, where we moved forward on a number of important initiatives. Just a few weeks ago, I was happy to welcome Vice President Pence to Ottawa to continue to discuss the kinds of important initiatives we're working on to grow our economies and support our middle class. And we will continue to work collaboratively with our American friends and partners on creating opportunities for Canadians and indeed for our citizens across the borders.
Abigail Beeman, Global News. Were you able to sway Nancy Pelosi at all in terms of ratification, and did anything concrete come out of your meeting in terms of NAFTA?
We had a very good meeting, not just with Speaker Pelosi, but with leadership from both sides of the House. And we had a very frank and positive conversation about the path forward to creating better opportunities for citizens, for workers on both sides of our border. I fully respect the conversations and discussions going on in their ratification process, have offered to be helpful in responding or allaying certain fears, but Canada is not going to get involved in the ratification process that the American Congress needs to go through.
In French, please.
On a eu une très bonne
we
conversation
had a very good
avec
conversation
la présidente Pelosi
the President Pelosi and the representatives of both sides of the room. The reality is that we respect the process of ratification that will happen in the United States, although we'll be there to answer questions and help where we can. We won't miss in the process of ratification in the United States.
The president didn't seem to shut the door completely in terms of future tariffs. Were you satisfied with his answer?
One of the things that was clear when we got that full lift on steel and aluminum tariffs was the concerns we have around transshipment and potential dumping into the North American market remains shared by Canadians and Americans. That's why we have committed to working closely together to ensure the security of our domestic steel and aluminum industries, and why we have a very close collaboration set up to move forward on that. Indeed, I'm pleased to say that today the Senate just passed, and therefore we have passed in record time our bill on safeguards to ensure that the North American market on steel and aluminum remains protected from outside influences.
Prime Minister, in the horse trading that's going on in D.C. over ratification of NAFTA, if there are changes to it, will you reopen the agreement? How will you deal with changes that come from D.C.? Would you do them by cabinet approval, or would you give Parliament the opportunity?
We've obviously said a number of times that we are very pleased with the deal we were able to secure that ensures good jobs and good outcomes for Canadians and indeed people in all three of our countries. And we are concerned that any reopening of NAFTA could lead to not just lengthy further negotiations that we all were quite pleased were behind us, but also may lead to worse outcomes for Canadians and for Canada. We recognize, however, that the U.S. is going through its process, and we remain alert to potential challenges and opportunities that may come through that process.
Just to follow up on that, though, how do you intend to approve it? The Conservatives are already saying if there are any changes, even to, say, biologics, as the Democrats are asking, that they want the ability to tackle this again, to address those changes, to make additional changes, perhaps. What do you say to them?
We have been very clear that we need to have the right deal for Canadians. We need to be growing our economy, securing and protecting Canadian workers. We're pleased with the work that was able to be done by Chrystia and others and her great negotiating team on securing strong environmental provisions, securing Indigenous provisions, securing the support of labor for a number of the important measures that protect workers in all three countries that we move forward with. And we're going to keep that at as the primary focus. As to what could happen hypothetically, I think Canadians just can be reassured that we are going to ensure that a good deal gets passed for Canadians as we secure access to the American market.
Adrian Morrow with the Globe and Mail. Did you specifically ask President Trump to press President Xi on COVID and Spavor and the sort of retaliatory trade actions that China is taking against us? And if so, what did the president actually commit to do? Like, is there something substantial he's going to do for Canada, or is he just going to sort of raise it and then move on to other issues?
We had an extended conversation on the situation that Canada is currently facing in regards to China and the unacceptable situation that two Canadian citizens are facing in the arbitrary detention by Chinese authorities of two Canadians. We discussed some of the challenges that China is presenting, not just to Canada, but to different sectors of the global economy. And we certainly agree that we will continue to work together as friends and allies to resolve these and other issues.
Did you raise the Meng Wanzhou extradition with President Trump? And if so, did you ask him to, take the extradition off the table or to stop the extradition proceedings if he does in fact make a deal with China?
As I said, we had extensive conversations on the situation with China. It was a great opportunity for us to really have important discussions about China, about the Canadians who are detained, and about potential paths forward. We're going to continue to work with the safety and security and safe return of the Canadians who are arbitrarily detained at the top of mind.
Raphaël Bouvier-Auclair, Radio-Canada. Je veux revenir là-dessus, M. Trudeau. Est-ce que le président Trump s'est engagé à des gestes concrets? Il en a parlé tout à l'heure, mais est-ce qu'il y a quelque chose concrètement qui est prêt à faire, que ce soit une rencontre avec le président Xi ou en parler sérieusement lors du sommet du G20?
Or will it just talk? We know that the president will have a meeting with President Xi, and we expect, absolutely, that the question of Canadians that are detained will be discussed, will be to the agenda. What we're expecting is that all our allies, and which they have done across the world, many of our allies underline directly to the Chinese authorities at what point it was unacceptable to detain two Canadians this arbitrary. It's asking from the United States that Huawei was arrested in Canada. Do they consider to retire these accusations? We continue to respect the rule of law in Canada with our partners and the different accords. And about extradition, we have had a good discussion on the subject in which I really put emphasis to the preoccupations, not only that I, but all Canadians have towards security about those two Canadians that are detained unjustly by the Chinese authorities in answer to a political situation.
Be gay with Indian country today. 2 days ago, Prime Minister, you approved the expansion of the Trans Mountain pipeline. What is your message to Indigenous nations where this pipeline will run through the reserves up in your country? And also, this pipeline will affect the waters that also provide resources to the tribal nations in the U.S.?
I am very pleased that there are many Indigenous communities across the pipeline route that are supportive of this project, have signed impact benefit agreements that will be moving forward as partners on the pipeline as we construct it. We know that moving forward in a way that both creates opportunities to create good jobs and grow while moving towards a cleaner, greener economy is something that all Canadians and indeed all citizens care about deeply around the world. That's why we've moved forward in a model way on consultation and partnership with Indigenous communities, and why we're going to continue to make sure that Indigenous communities are at the heart of the path forward, including, as we've announced, potential Indigenous ownership of the pipeline that could be 25%, 50%, or even 100% ownership by Indigenous peoples in this country of the expanded pipeline. We recognize, however, that there are people, including Indigenous communities, that are in disagreement in the way forward that we've chosen, and we will continue to listen to them and work with them to allay their fears and concerns.
Hi, I'm Luis Alonso with EIP. Thank you for the opportunity. I would like to ask you about Mexico, Mr. Prime Minister. President Trump and President López Obrador agreed to give a 45-day period for President Trump to consider whether or not to impose the 5% tariff on Mexico. So I wanted to ask you, if that 5% tariff becomes a reality, what do you see the impact, not only for the treaty, for the prospect of the treaty, but also what will be the impact for Canada?
I was pleased to see the Mexican Senate vote overwhelmingly to move forward on ratification of the new NAFTA agreement. There is no question that some of the strong elements in that deal are going to be good news for workers in Mexico. We ensure that there are strong labor standards that will ultimately be beneficial for the Mexican people. We understand the difficulties involved with the U.S. southern border, but we will not be weighing in on bilateral issues between Mexico and the United States.
Last question.
Thank you, Mr. Prime Minister. Satpal Johal, Daily Ajit. So I have a question regarding the Bill 21, which is recently passed in Quebec legislature. And it's today, 4th day, and we haven't heard a single word from you. Reason of that, and do you agree this bill discriminates the visible minorities in Quebec? And as a Prime Minister, what can you do to protect minorities in Quebec?
I have been very clear on this issue and on issues that have preceded it that my government and I personally will always stand up to defend minority rights everywhere across Canada. We do not feel that it is a government's responsibility or in a government's interest to legislate on what people should be wearing. We have a strong Charter of Rights and Freedoms that guarantees freedom of religion, freedom of expression, and we will certainly ensure that our views are well known and continue to defend Canadians' rights.
In French, my perspective and my opinions on this issue has always been clear. We are expecting that we protect in Canada minority rights, rights for religion, expression. I am preoccupied, obviously, by this attack to the rights for Canadians. Canadians know my perspective on this.
Do you think is it time to rework notwithstanding clause of the Charter? And my second part of the question is the land border crossings. Canadians are not very happy about this, maybe that. And did you have opportunity to raise this issue with President Trump today to reopen Safe Third Country agreement to fix the loophole?
I think obviously we were very pleased to move forward on a number of important border safety issues, whether it be the entry, exit, or pre-clearance. It's going to ensure that our border remains safe as we move forward with greater back and forth of our goods and our people. That is something that is fundamental and essential to Canadians.
Thank you.
Merci beaucoup.